Hi, this is Mike Price, Senior Editor of NGWA's Water Well Journal, and welcome to an NGWA Industry Connected video. Joining me today is Carole Mahoney, Unbound Sales Growth bi-monthly columnist for Water Well Journal. How are you today, Carole?
I'm doing pretty great. Summer is treating me very well, I think.
Mahoney provides information that can enable you to better close sales and increase revenue for your company. Mahoney is the founder of Unbound Growth, and sales managers using her program have seen their teams reach more than 130% of their sales quotas. Mahoney has written a column titled The 4 Principles of Growth for our August issue of Water Well Journal. And Carole, we'd like to have you walk us through those 4 principles to sales today, if you could.
Absolutely. So I wrote the article. Here where I live in Maine, we have all kinds of waterways and everything else. And I'm lucky to live on a small little lake, and I have all these organic gardens. And as I was walking through the gardens, I was thinking back to all of the time and knowledge that I've spent gardening. And you can read more about that in the article. And as I was going through and looking at all of my gardens, I realized that the way that I garden, the way that I've learned to garden, all of the knowledge that I've gathered is very similar to some of the concepts that I use for businesses when they're trying to grow and scale their business growth in some way, whether that's through sales or partnerships in some way. And as I was looking at it, I thought there's really 4 major principles that it comes down to. And before I dive into those principles, I think one of the things that's really important to understand whenever you're trying to reach that next level in anything, whether it's in business growth and sales or personal development, is that it comes to a certain mindset that we have to have. How open are we to willing are we to learn something new? Things that we may think that we already know. I know probably a lot of people who are going to read the article and who are going to listen to and watch this video later, they've probably been in business, if not for families and generations of families, but maybe even 10 or 15 or even 5 years. They've probably seen a lot happen. And so sometimes when we are experienced or we've been able to benefit from the experience of others, we sometimes take for granted that we know everything that there is to know about our business and our industry, right? We're all guilty of it. It's the curse of knowledge. And so one of the mindsets that we have to really be able to grasp a hold of in order to grow our sales, especially today, is to have that openness and willingness to new ideas and to be able to think, you know what, even if I think I know it, it's good to get a refresher and a reminder. And that's one of the things that happened to me as I look through my gardens and as I go to the supply stores and things that are around me, is there's all this knowledge out there, and digging into what's still available to help to refresh you or even to get a new perspective on something that you thought you knew how to do before is critical for these next 4 principles that we talk about both in the article. And so one of the principles is what I call the permanent guarded beds. And this is really a principle of being able to focus on one area of growth at a time. I think sometimes what we tend to do as business owners is, and I'm a business owner myself, so I know that I've been guilty of this before, is that we tend to try to have our hands in everything, right? Like we're trying to juggle all of these different things in the air. We're trying to hire staff. We're trying to train staff. We're trying to figure out bookkeeping and all of these things that are in the air. We can only focus on one thing really at a time. And so focusing on the areas where we can actually see growth. A good colleague and friend of mine once told me, I focus on where cash is. Where is the cash coming from? And that becomes my priority focus. And so this means for us as businesses that we need to know the numbers. We need to know the bookkeeping numbers in the terms of where is our profitability coming from? Not just who is our biggest paying customers, but where are we expending the least amount of resources to make the most amount of money? Those are your areas of growth. And sometimes we get this myopic view that we think our most highest paying customers are our most profitable. But sometimes the highest paying customers, those big jobs, also suck up a lot of time and resources, which don't allow you to focus on any other areas of growth in your business. So think of permanent garden beds as the path that you're laying in your business as to where you're going to focus and direct your growth. And it seems like, common sense, but I've seen it happen that if we try to be all things to all people, we actually get nowhere and we make no one happy. So for example, I think one of the things that I mentioned in the article is that if your focus is only on drilling new wells right now, but you find that there are other areas of growth. Sometimes we can be tempted to try to be all things. But one way that you can keep your focus is by finding partnerships and alliances for things. Like, for example, if you dug a new well and there's a need for testing of water, but that's not something that you do, but there are local people that do that or partners that you can trust to do that, you can start bundling packages together. If you drill a well with us, then you get X number of years of free water testing to make sure that everything is okay. So that's one way that you can focus on growth. Another one that I talk about, and I do in all of my gardening, is what I call the reliance on compost. I'm an organic gardener. I think a lot of us as small business owners can understand the concept of trying to grow our businesses organically. We don't normally have, as small businesses, a ton of resources and money to spend on advertising, whether it's on Facebook or Yellow Pages. Do Yellow Pages still actually exist? So what I call this reliance on compost is that we need to make sure that we are, like compost feeds plants and introduces those healthy organisms in, that we need to make sure that we're constantly feeding the growth in our businesses. So consistent marketing is needed. You don't necessarily need to run ads sporadically here and there, but actually having a consistent level of business coming in from referrals, from introductions, from partnerships and alliances, from creating content to educate your market. Because I know for me personally, I have a well drilled in my yard, but I don't know the first thing about it. I know that it needs electricity run. I know that I should probably get it tested, but that is the extent of what I know. But it is the most crucial thing for me to be able to live in my house. I should know more about this. So consistent marketing, reliance on compost to organically grow your business means also educating your customers and your potential customers. And by creating this buying experience where people feel educated and that you're going to take care of them, it creates those loyal fans. And like compost, loyal fans help you to bring in more customers. And so you're growing more organically. And the culture of your company is really what helps to feed that. So a good customer experience really depends on how you treat your employees and how valued they feel, which is another way that we can bring that compost into our business growth and into our sales as business owners. The other thing that I do in my garden and that I also introduce as a principle for growth is what they call high density mixed planting. I call it companion planting, where I've planted squashes in my garden. And so now I've also planted radishes, because the radishes use a different level of soil than the squashes do. And the radishes also attract certain bugs that will kill the other bugs that will kill my squash plants. So soil-wise, I'm able to measure out and figure out, all right, these plants are going to grow under the soil, and that's where my carrots and radishes are going to go. And these are going to grow all above the ground, which is going to help to keep these cool, as well as introduce different pests and other bugs or repel other bugs from it. In our businesses, that means what we're doing is we're trying to use every square inch of resource that we have, right? So in my garden, where I'm looking at my soil as the resources that I have for growth, in our businesses, we have to make sure that we're continuously examining where can we get this growth. So what that means is we should be customizing our approaches and not just planting in a row. Everything looks exactly the same to everyone else. Again, going back to that kind of buying experience and customer experience that people have with your business. By customizing the approach, like I customize my garden beds, that helps us to understand what current needs customers have. By getting that feedback in, like I go in and I look and make sure that the plants are actually doing what I think that they're going to do. One of the ways that we can implement something like this is that if we take your marketing and you segment your buyers for targeted relevant messaging, then that allows you in your marketing to be consistent and customizable. One of the things that I also tell businesses and executives is find some new opportunities, pockets of growth in their markets that you can use in addition to your core product. Like we use the example of if you've drilled a well, offer some complementary services for water testing and see if that can be a potential area of growth. So kind of combining those things. I kind of look at it as we need to focus, but we can't put all of our eggs in one basket. So if you only do one thing for one person, it's going to be hard for you to kind of expand and diversify and customize that portfolio for the needs of the customer. And then the fourth thing that I do is if you're a gardener and you plant everything all at the same time, you're going to have to harvest everything all at the same time, which means you're not going to be able to do anything else. And this is one of the things that I see happen in a lot of small businesses, that they go through these up and down revenue cycles where, all right, we don't have any business coming in, so let's hit them with a whole bunch of marketing and advertising, get a whole bunch of new customers in the door. Then we're going to service all of those customers. Meanwhile, the marketing and the advertising and that consistent feeding has stopped. And so they go through these cycles where it's content planning, drop everything, and then harvest everything. So succession planning is when you're staggering your seasons of growth so that you're not having to, for example, what can happen is that when you try to get everything all done at once, some things get left on the vine to rot, and it's wasteful. So maybe leads aren't getting followed up with as quickly as they should because they're so busy servicing customers or following up on the ones that they already have. There's only so much time in a day. Or maybe it's that something's falling through the crack and they're rushing through those leads, and so they're not actually hearing or listening for other unmet needs that the business could possibly provide for. So by going through these ups and down cycles, they're actually being even more inefficient because they're losing those other opportunities in there. So just like you should always be planting and harvesting all the time with your garden, you should be doing the same thing with your business. We're going back to that consistent marketing so that you have an even level of things coming in. And if you think about it, I think depending on where you are in the country, there's probably a seasonality to the business. Like I know here in New England, it's pretty hard to drill a well in February because you're going to dig through the snow. You've got however many feet of frost to try to dig through. And so it's going to slow down in those seasons. So then you want to think of what are some of the other services or things that we can offer to customers, whether it's, issues with frozen lines, or maybe it's something else that's happening in that particular season that's going to affect their water quality. If it's the springtime, for example, we had an issue here in my local neighborhood where somebody's septic broke in the spring and went everywhere. And so now I'm like, okay, is my well going to be okay? Because we all feed from the same underground artesian well. So there are different things that you can use to level out those kind of ups and downs. If you're in tune with your customer, if you're constantly marketing, you're always getting that feedback. All of these different principles kind of work together in that way. So if you think about it from the top, first one, relying on making sure that you have pathways in your business so that you know where the growth is coming from. By profitability, not just by hunch. In our garden, sometimes if we just throw our seeds everywhere, we're stepping on those areas of growth. The second one, relying on compost, organically feeding our businesses, making sure that our customers are having a good experience because we have a good culture with our employees. How you treat your employees is how your employees are going to treat your customers. And then mixing up our plantings, right? So not all of our eggs in one basket, but bringing in complementary services so that those things can benefit each other. And then finally, doing that succession planting, making sure that our growth isn't just happening in these big spurts of dry spells and harvest times, but trying to level off that up and down that happens in our businesses by doing small areas of growth at a time. So those are my 4 principles of gardening, my 4 principles for business growth and sales. And I think that for us all to sort of get through what's going to be coming next in our economy, these are the things that we're going to really need to holistically and organically focus on.